I'm Chair of the Finance and Property Committee. We're meeting in the council chambers here at City Hall in Wisconsin Rapids via remote video conferencing on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 at 4:35 p.m. Public may be listening to the meeting by calling 1-312-626-6799, meeting ID 859-075-491-548, hashtag. With that, item number 1 is to call the meeting to order, which I'll do. Item 2 is to consider for approval a temporary retail Class B fermented malt beverages license and Class B wine license application for Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce, Incorporated Angel Whitehead, president, for an off-the-clock event at CHI Decor Shop, 1630 26th Street North on Monday, November 8th, 2021. Do we have the hours for that, Jennifer? I don't think that was on there. Maybe it was. I think. Yeah. Yeah, more like 4 to 6 or something, or 4:30 to 6:30. So we'll clarify. We'll clarify the time. Don't see that on the sheet here. Okay, if we can find it. Unless I'm missing it. Otherwise, everything looks, the rest looks in order, so.
I'll move to approve.
4 to 6? Okay, we got the time. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. We found out the time. It's 4 to 6. If there's no further questions, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thanks, Dean. Number 3, consider a request from 45 Mercantile LLC, DBA 45 Mercantile, Jennifer Zimmerman, agent, for a Class A beer and a Class A liquor license for the premises located at 1000 East Riverview Expressway, Suite 170. Jennifer's here. If you would want to come up to the podium to say a few words about it. There's a button there on the microphone there on the stand in the middle.
See a green light?
It says push.
Oh,
Green light should light up.
I'm on.
You're on.
Yeah, so we recently purchased Ruby Red's Cranberries, if you're familiar with Ruby Red's Cranberries. And we moved the location from where we were in the town of Grand Rapids to the city of Rapids, right where the Blue Play Cafe used to be. Ruby Red's has held a wine license for as long as they've been kind of in existence. We switched it to 45 Mercantile because we're bringing a meat market to town, so we're going to be meats, cheeses, and cranberries, but we would like to continue to sell wine and other alcoholic beverages at the store, but the name is changing to 45 Mercantile. That's the retail license and the alcohol license. Both will be under that LLC, but just so you guys know, it was previously Ruby Red's Cranberries. Any questions for me?
I guess, looking on here quick, hours operation and what such,
Our
days
current-
operation.
Yeah, it's 10 to 5, so we're Monday through Friday, 10 to 5, Saturday, 9 to 2. So that's our current hours of operations. We're not changing that in the near future. We have moved. We don't have the alcohol moved. We are open in our new location, yes, just not serving alcohol.
I don't have any further questions. Anybody else?
Second.
Motion is second to approve. If there's no further questions by the committee, we'll vote. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say thank you, Jennifer, for coming down and taking the time out of your day to show up and attend the meeting tonight. Thank you. Item number 4, consider recommendation from Statewide Services to allow a claim from Automotive Rentals Incorporated on behalf of the state of Wisconsin DOA for damage to one of their vehicles allegedly sustained in a collision with a city squad on 4/16/2021.
Sure. In the packet, you got the letter, or you saw the letter from Statewide Claim Services, who's our adjuster on these types of things, and they recommended denial. Based on their investigation, they found that the majority of the fault for the collision was the other party, so they're recommending denial, which basically what that does is shorten up the statutory limitations to 6 months for the other party to take legal action.
Any questions by anybody? If there aren't, I'll move to that we move to deny the request. Or disallow a claim. Put it that way. Yeah, motion is second, disallow the claim. If there's no further questions by anybody, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. And number 5, consider recommendation to disallow claims from the city retirees Wade Wittenberg, Doug Van Berkel, Steve Belter, and John Jansen regarding life insurance premium contributions.
Sue
Any,
on
who had, do you have that?
I don't.
Do you have that?
Is Sue on the Zoom?
I don't know. Is Sue on the Zoom?
Okay. Basically what this is that there's a claim by some retirees of the city about health insurance claim and what was in their labor contract, and they're working through that. Our insurance company advised the city to deny the claim. Basically the same thing as with the one previous. It just shortens up the statutory time to 6 months for the claimants to pursue further legal action or whatever. So I think this is kind of an ongoing thing, and this was just a recommendation from our insurance company to deny the claim. So that's my understanding of this issue.
Anybody have a question or anything that I can't answer? Committee, what would be your wishes?
I'll move to disallow the claim.
Motion is second to deny the claim. No further questions. Committee, I'll call for the vote. All in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Item 6 is to discuss accepting a professional services agreement from R.A. Smith on a time and materials basis to work with city staff to refine the transportation utility model, complete the database, and work on connecting the data with utility accounts. Joe, would you like to, I guess, start this off here this evening?
Sure. So the last Common Council meeting, it appeared that there was quite a bit of interest in expanding the knowledge base of how a transportation utility would work and understanding the formulas and the concepts to knowing exactly what every party might owe. And we would need to do this exercise. The initial staff's plan was that if the ordinance was approved and the procedure was approved, we would then go through this process and, and have everything ready before the utility actually begins operation. But given the council's interest in really knowing all that information up front, I'm looking to start performing this work as soon as possible. And this would allow us to take the time we need to work with our consultant and work on getting our staff trained and get this thing finalized. Obviously, it would still be a draft because until the ordinance is passed and until a firm budget is set, they're just equations. But I think what we can do is we'd be able to provide information on the number of trips that each parcel is calculated to generate, and then, throw some scenarios together from there. If we use what's proposed, exactly what that would be, and we could make those changes then on the fly if the council wants to put different numbers at the desired attained revenues for that. So that's what this is. There is a Public Works meeting after this to discuss the next steps, and those two next steps would be to proceed or to hold out bringing that, or to table bringing that back to the Common Council until this information is had, or to bring it to the Common Council, in which case, if it's approved, we'd need to do this anyway. So that's the purpose of this request.
If we approve this tonight, it, I guess would be on condition of what Public Works, how they would continue to go with
It
it?
certainly could be. I would think the only way that we wouldn't do this is if, for some reason, it was permanently tabled. Because if the Public Works Committee wants to take the ordinance to a vote in October, or if it wants to hold off taking it to a vote until we perform this work, either of those two scenarios would require some outside assistance to get this thing finalized. The only time this would be, if you wanted to put a condition in there in case there was a desire to, terminate the project altogether, you could make a condition to that effect, because then this work would really be a waste of time and resources to get us to that stage.
Was there a cost in this, Joe?
It's a time and materials.
Oh, yeah.
My estimate is that it wouldn't exceed 25,000.
I thought I saw that somewhere.
I believe it would be well under that. But we do have a number of complicated properties to get ironed out. And some of the, we're hoping to do most of the work ourselves and use the consultant for guidance. But we do still have a number of projects to wrap up this fall within our engineering department. And that work group is working on design work for 2022 projects. And so some of the ability to do some of the legwork is going to depend on staff priorities and just our ability to set some things aside. So I wanted to make sure we had enough to get the help we need. It is a time and materials basis, so if we don't need that much help, we won't be spending that much money. I'm looking to cap it at that 25. If it appears that we're going to be getting close to that, of course, I'd bring it back for further discussion.
So you're looking at a cap of 25?
Yep.
Is that, Jake?
Thanks, Tom. So where I stand on this is I do feel that we need more public education on the transportation utility, and a lot of it. And I have a few different ideas on how we could do that. I think we have been reaching out digitally via our website. I would like to see us reach out directly to everyone in their mailbox, either via mailing. The school district did one for their referendum to inform people, or taking an ad out in the City Times. Those seem to be in everyone's mailbox as well, and that might be a cheaper route. But however we get there, it was clear to me from the public hearing that nobody really understands this yet. And I've been in a lot of the meetings. There hasn't been many people in council listening when the consultants were here. They didn't get a chance to ask those questions to the consultants that night. We didn't really have answers for them. And outside of the public education part, there's just a lot of question marks, I feel, about this currently. and I would like to see most of this delayed until at least next year, and then we can pick this back up and work forward. But at this time, I'm not sure I agree with spending additional money until we're ready to pick it back up and move forward with it. And I would hope that we don't do that this month or next month, and that we do take some time to let everybody get educated on this before we start taking any more steps, because we're way ahead of where the public is on this. And I think there needs to be some public education done before then. And the other thing I would bring up is at that public hearing, we didn't have a fee structure. So 85% complete. Is there a fee structure for most properties, and this would finish off the additional ones that we have questions about, or is this would be the work to complete the fee structure in total?
Right, so the fee structure is the model itself, right? There's a certain number of trips generated annually in the city, and there's a certain dollar amount that the city will wish to raise through the utility. Part of those 90% of that cost, those fees will come from a per trip, and 10% based on the number of parcels, or the number of parcels that would receive the utility fee. So some of that is still yet to be determined. Some of that is what this project would do, is to look at a number of the properties, the residential properties, the single-family residential, that's easy. A good number of the commercial ones, we have that figured out. But there's quite a few residential properties, whether it's threeplex, fourplex, a number of commercial properties that are fairly complicated that aren't done. And of course, that makes a difference in the total number of trips. Really, I don't think it's going to make a few dollars of difference to the average homeowner at the end of the year. Either way, it'd make a bigger difference to a Walmart or a high-traffic business. The general concept is the model. If the idea of using trips and the ratio of business trips versus residential trips versus, and that's how we generate these revenues, really that's what the ordinance is about. Everything else is up to the common council. If the amount that's being asked for is too much and we want to continue to bond for some stuff and have the utility less, council says, well, instead of 2.7 million or whatever number we threw in there, we want it 1 or none or whatever. So what we've done so far is to develop the model. If we want to get kind of down to the details, so that if you want to pick an address in the city and know exactly what that looks like, we can do that, but that's going to take some time and effort and some additional resources for us to get there.
Thank you, Joe. And I feel like 85% done. I don't know. I wasn't there for the contract negotiations, but this should have been a part of the last 15% being the fee structure. I feel like that should have been in the first part, because the model, I don't have trouble understanding the model, but the big question is the fee structure for me. And the other big piece of why I think that we should have no problem taking our time on this is, as we have the department budget sitting in front of us, you can see that there is no budgeting for a public works director in that. So if we're going to move forward with this, it's very important to me that we have someone to oversee this project. And I'm sure there's a plan in place, but at this time, with all this uncertainty, whether it be fee structure, the public works position, director position, I feel like we need to take our time on this. And so I can see tabling this until those are ironed out. So with that said, I'm not in favor of spending more money on this yet. But once those are ironed out, I think this could come right back on the agenda, no doubt. And as we approach the end of the year, I feel those questions will be by then. So those are my thoughts on it. So I won't be voting in favor of spending additional money on this yet until we know if it's going to be the right environment to move forward. Thank you.
Terry?
Thank you. Joe, the transportation utility that was produced, the multiple spreadsheets that we've been given since April, May, the scenario is like based on the 3,000 square foot facility with drive-through. You know, the scenario 1, 2, 3, I know they didn't have the 2 minus 2 plus that we were kind of looking at, the 2 plus. How accurate are those, you know, in the 10,000 square foot building, the single family home, the 3268 for the scenario 2 for the annual fixed charge, and the other scenario is based on the 7,400 customers annual fixed charge, and are those pretty accurate
So,
as it is?
yeah, so those are what I would call a worst-case scenario. That's based on the information that we have today. And because we still have work to do to determine some of these other multiple-use facilities, that'll only add to the number of trips. And, you know, we're looking to generate a pie of a certain size. We're just trying to figure out how many pieces to slice it into. As we look at some of these other facilities that we don't have figured out yet, that just adds more trips, which means the cost per trip goes down slightly, the cost per property or per parcel, per customer goes down slightly. So, so based on the information that we have right now, those are absolutely exact. But the information we have right now is not final. So my prediction is that the actual costs for those exact same businesses, and those were some examples that we pulled, we didn't want to put someone's name on it, but we pulled those from some actual parcels in the city to come up with those numbers. They will be less as long as we don't change the amount that we're trying to generate.
And so the information that we've been given since, I don't remember, it started in April. When did we first get all this information? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was May-ish, I think, when we had our first presentation.
Okay, so all this information that we've been supposed to be studying and generating information and questions on
Right.
is right here in
Yes.
front of us.
Yep.
And one other question, I know someone had mentioned at one of the last meetings that, I think it was the public hearing, that Ari Smith should be here to answer the public's questions, but we paid them to deliver the information to us.
Correct.
It is our job to disseminate the information to the public.
Right, right. If we wanted them here, they'd be glad to be here, but they've completed their
Your job.
responsibility in the contract. That contract's fulfilled. They've done everything that we've asked them to do. So if we want to ask them to come and make some more presentations, I'm certain that they'd be happy to do it. We just have to pay for it.
Right. And then the only thing I have, and right, every citizen needs to understand it clearly. Like Jake said, the public has no idea. I mean, we're all in a community. We probably hear people talking about it, you know, oh, they're going to start something, you know, how many times every car goes down my road. You know, they're very misinformed. But the information's out there, whether or not they're looking at it. I mean, you can lead a horse to drink, you know what I mean? It's like you can't shove it down their throat. They see that there's going to be more cost. They're going to be naysayer. You know, there's a lot of people are going to be naysayers anyways, because I don't want to pay more.
Right.
But you look at what the alternative is and what the benefit and the sustainability is. So, I mean, I don't want to say it's goofy, but I could see if they came here, now you have 2,000 people sitting here. Well, what's 411 Clover Street? I want to know what I'm paying, or I'm with this address. I mean, oh my gosh, that would be, I mean, I just think that would be ridiculous. Yes, they have a right to know. I'm not saying that. But in a generalization, like all this information that we've been given since May is here.
It is, but from, I guess, two parts to my comment here. One is that based on the, you know, the questions that were asked, I think Jake kind of has a point, and that, you know, our public outreach, we've made some presentations, we've got stuff on the internet, there's been a few articles in the paper, putting something together like a newsletter or something like that describes the problem, you know, the cost of assessments, the miles of street and age that we have, and sustainability. You know, I think just getting that information out there maybe in a mailbox would be a good idea. And then as to your point about knowing exactly, that we can do that. And that's what this proposal would allow us to do, is we could get it refined to the exact amount, and we could create a GIS page that people could have access to, right? Anybody could just type in an address, and you could see what that property would be billed. I mean, we can do that. I would really discourage doing that with the information that we have now, because it isn't complete. For the residential property owners, that's easy. And for the ones where we're confident that we are where we need to be, those are easy. But for that last 15%, it's not going to skew things much, but you start publishing something that says, this is what you're going to pay, and then if that's not it, that just extends, that creates distrust.
Right.
You know, and that's why we've presented things with, examples, so that you can get a feel for it, you can understand what the model, how it's supposed to work, you get a feel for what those costs are likely to be, and then for us to refine it and get it to that last step, from staff, we thought, well, we don't want to spend that money until we know we're going that direction. But if the idea of the utility is still concerning, and we want to get down to that level where you really want to know what is going to be the fee for every property, this would allow us to do it. We could do that work. We planned on, doing it over the next couple months anyway. So, at the same time, if we want to hold off a bit and this thing gets implemented sometime in 2022, if the council wants to move forward with it, we can look at doing that too. I guess bottom line is it's something new, it's something very different, it's something very unique. And the question is how far out do we want to continue to bond for these projects and continue to do special assessments? Because as we wrap our 2021 projects up and we get those engineering reports ready, we're going to be charging those special assessments, and some of those people were hoping we wouldn't be. And there's ways around that, but making sure that we have a plan and can try to make sure the public knows what that plan is, I think is equally as important.
Is it something that we can do? I know Water and Light sends out their little, information page.
Like the stuff?
Yeah, to the utility customers who would be paying it anyways.
Sure.
Obviously you couldn't write everything about it because it's just too much, but could there be something on there, just bulletproof, or points, have the alderperson's names, phone numbers in there where they could call? Because a lot of people are very confused over it, and obviously they're not getting that information online. Because yes, the questions that we heard, they don't understand it at all, where at least they could call their alderperson and ask, perhaps.
Yeah, I could check and see. I think when we implemented our automated recycling program and refuse program, I think we sent newsletters out for that.
As well as the wastewater, or when we did that fund for was that the wastewater?
I think so. I think we were looking at, I think it was under $4,000 to do mailers to everybody.
Because that would hit the utility people that this would affect.
Right.
Sorry, I had another question. If they decide to push this off later, but the thing is, sometimes when we push it off, we forget about it, and then we retrain ourselves all over again, and to me, it's sometimes a waste of the 5 months, but we've paid for their data, so everything would be there. We would just recontract them at a later time for more questions or whatever else we needed.
Yeah, I think, the engineer that worked on this with us, he's been with that company for a while now, so I'm not not too concerned about that, and he's, this isn't the first one of these that he's prepared. A few other municipalities have gotten to the point where they looked at the model and decided, maybe not. I'm not concerned about picking this back up after a few months. Where we're at now and the legwork that city staff needs to do, along with the consultant, is something that we can do right away, or it's something, we're not going to have a negative impact on our ability to get the work done if we wait a few months.
Okay. And how will that affect, because I know, as you said, there's a lot of people over by Chase, 18th Avenue. I mean, they want this through, they can't afford the $20,000, $22,000 assessments that some of them are getting. So if we push this off, how does that affect them? Is all of the borrowing in the 2022 budget without the transportation utility set in there already? And how would that affect the special assessments if we don't proceed with this, that they're hopeful that this goes through?
Yeah, so if the transportation utility is approved, we still need to bond for that next year while we generate those revenues. And we've got to make sure that the utility is, if we're going to do this, that financially we're, when we're bonding, well, if you want to add 20,000, you bond 20,000 more. If the idea here is that we're not going to bond, we need to make sure that we're generating the right amount of revenues to do the projects that we need to do. Typically, I think if we look last year, I think we did our assessment hearings in April-ish. And the motion made by the Public Works Committee was that we would not have a final resolution for any, like your 18th Avenues, your 15th and 11th Streets, basically anything that hasn't had that assessment hearing wouldn't have assessments then. So I guess there could be a couple ways to manage that. If the city knew that it intended to move forward, could modify that motion and set a different date. Otherwise, we typically get our projects wrapped up and get the final quantities and final costs and final assessments prepared over the winter months. And it's usually somewhere around March, April-ish when we have that assessment hearing and final resolution. So if we get done before that, the motion that's already been made takes care of it. If it looks like it's going to be sometime after that, there are financial implications to not doing the special assessments to the city also. The city has always counted on that revenue and has bonded accordingly. So,
Tim, when do the special assessments come due? So, what was done this year?
Right, it all depends.
When would the first payment be made on what was done this year?
Basically, anything that we billed this year, the first installment, if they didn't pay off the bill in its entirety, the first installment, depending if it's a 5, 10, or 15 year, would be placed on the tax roll. So that first installment will go on their tax bill, and then, so, also, just as for.
On tax?
Right, yeah.
For this year?
Yeah, so anything that was billed this year, that first installment, if they didn't pay it, they have till November 1st, to pay that. And then if they don't, then we calculate that installment and it goes on their first bill. And that first installment on that bill does not include any interest. There's no interest in that first year. And also just from a budgetary standpoint with the, as this transportation utility is discussed, and my whole approach to the budget this year was I'm putting the budget together as if the transportation utility is not there. So I'm gonna estimate what the special assessment revenue is. We're gonna be looking at how to fund our capital projects, by issuing debt. Then if at some point the utility is approved, then we could adjust the budget, to account for that.
The project has to be completed this year. Talk about projects that are completed this year.
Right. well, projects completed this year, that's when we'll have the special assessment hearing sometime next year, and then that's when the bill is generated.
Yeah.
So the bills that were generated this year
Or
are for ones that
things
were,
happened in 20.
correct.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to clarify that people that were, as long as I was talking,
Go ahead.
my thought on this, first of all, I'm not thrilled about the fact that, this extra 15%, or along with what Jake mentioned, that this wasn't included in the initial consultation fees, and I understand there were things that we addressed, whether it was, we didn't give them enough to go on. That being said, I think we're spending a lot of time talking about parts of what we're talking about. It should be talked about at the Public Works meeting. And if this project, the only way this even comes to the Public Works meeting is if this financing part moves forward. Otherwise, there's no need to talk about it at the Public Works meeting. We can always, at the council, turn down this financing. So I would hope that the actual, whether I agree that the 25,000 additional dollars to research things that I think we maybe should have already had done, is a good policy or not, we can kick that out at Public Works, it seems, if I'm understanding correct. Excuse me. So in regards to that, I'd like to at least see it move forward so that we can discuss the issues of how the public works, or how the public knows about it, all the advertising of it. Those things are public works issues, not finance and property issues, in my mind. So that's a whole different project that we can't even bother talking about it if we don't move any financing forward. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Dean. Joe?
And just to clarify, this additional ask, if that would have been the scope of the original project, this amount would have been included in that, right? So I mean, it's not like we're getting stuck with potentially having to pay more money for a service that we should have already gotten. It's, if we wanted to get to 100%, we would have paid for that up front. And most don't, just because it's like, well, they want to see, well, what does the model look like? And this, whatever change there may be, as far as the cost per trip or the number of trips, that change will be very small. I mean, what this does is, and we need to do that in order to implement it, is this gets down into the weeds and defines how many trips each property generates. That's really the difference here. And that's quite a bit of work to take that next step. I just wanted to make sure that, I had a chance to clarify that if there's any question there.
Jay, and then
Tom?
I'll have something to say. Jay?
Thank you. So, going back to, didn't this whole process kind of start with a survey that was done in the community?
Yes, and the number of respondents to the survey, it wouldn't be enough to call it a representative survey, but the results were pretty clear. People were looking for something that was fair. They really wanted to get rid of special assessments, and there wasn't really any other method to do that. We're a little bit hamstrung.
But that survey was sent out last year about this time.
It was.
So I guess to the point that the public hasn't had a chance to respond to this, this has been out there for a year. It's been on websites, it's been on the mayor's radio show, it's been right down the list. So short of sending a letter, which I don't object to, but we're getting pretty late in the game for that. The other thing is between those 10 and 15%, or that 15% of properties, between 1,000 and 1,500, has staff started working on those already?
No.
Okay. And then I guess the last thing is probably for Tim, is just a reminder what this is going to have, not only for the impact on special assessments, but the impact on taxes going forward in the next couple of years, if you could. Thank you.
Sure, I didn't bring the document with me, but I think was that last month? I distributed kind of what, just from a debt service, with, if we had the transportation utility, And, obviously then that would use the fund the project as opposed to debt proceeds. I had projected out what that did at the tax rate with our current model of borrowing annually for those projects, what that debt service looks like for the next 10, 15 years. And then also looking at it, and then, Joe, do you have that? I can look it up. But
Yeah, I do. Give me just a minute here.
I can find that document. But basically, it showed what the savings would be as far as from a debt service tax rate on a, right, yeah,
Yeah, it looks like about $162
yeah. Yep.
on a $100,000 home.
I have it in my email. Actually. So, and that was like the annual savings for the transportation utility on a $125,000 or $100,000 house. Obviously, as the property value increases and decreases, that figure gets adjusted.
So as time goes on and the debt starts to go down, assuming we're not borrowing for something else, does the debt, should that number increase, the taxes continue to go down as the debt goes down, or are we going to be locked into it?
Well, eventually, if you're not borrowing, I mean, assuming they're not borrowing for any other
Right.
major project that wouldn't be covered under the transportation utility, like, we borrowed for the aquatics. Eventually, you'll pay down your existing debt, and then you won't have a debt service tax levy. And so then, as that debt comes down, obviously, the amount you have to levy each year to pay that debt comes down, and that's where that savings comes in between the two models.
Very good. Thank you.
I guess, I'll claim the floor. From my standpoint is that, we have talked about this for quite a period of time. It has been a year, I do believe. I fear of if we table it, what happens with tables is, they gather dust. And somebody, long after most of us will be gone, somebody will say, didn't they try to do something back when? And what was it? And we're to this point, I guess, I would hate to see us put a stop to it. I would like to see us continue to go on. The meeting after this tonight, Public Works has it on there for further discussion. This has to do with this agreement, professional services agreement with R.A. Smith, and that. And I think we should enter into that. And when I started this item earlier, I asked about the being contingent upon, and I don't know if it has to be that, but that obviously that if as we go through the process, if Public Works says no or whatever it is, that we aren't going to do anymore, then what finance would do, if we agree to go along with, obviously then what finance would have done would be null and void. That would have to be. So I think we've put, staff has put so much time and effort into trying to come up with a different way to help with the debt load. And by that, would help with what a significant number of people every year get hit with special assessments. The number is less than what the entire amount of the whole city is, but over years, that amount is that amount, and 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 that amount, catching up to what the whole city is eventually. And so if we could do something different, those people wouldn't be looking at the $5,000 and $10,000 and $12,000 bills. that hopefully that if this model would come out, that the residential owners would be looking at whatever, I'm just gonna say the $100 or whatever a year, which would be a more equitable, fair way how to do it. And that hopefully that over time that we could, because something's gonna have to be done somehow to address our street situation, the 150 some or 60 some miles of street that we have. How far behind the 8 ball we are, and that where this is all leading me to is that I guess instead of just going on, I guess I would make a motion that we. Okay, tell him in a second. Is he on the phone? Did you say he's on the phone? Okay. Okay. Okay, I will, okay. I will, reserve my time here, and, if the mayor can hear me, I will, let him interject at this point in time. Mr. Mayor?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, so you have the floor right now.
Thank you. I'm listening to it on Zoom and watching it on Facebook, and voices don't match up. And kind of hard to know when to jump in, but I agree with you, Tom. I think this process has gone far, and it needs to be seen through the finish line. The 25 extra thousand, potential 25 extra thousand is still a lot of money, and but unfortunately, to get to that finish line, we might have to spend that. I agree with Jake that, especially after last public hearing, that people are confused and maybe not as well educated as I had hoped they'd be by now. And then maybe we can come up with a newsletter and we can pay water and light to stuff it in utility bills. That'd be one good way to be able to get every property owner kind of covered. But I agree, we need to see this through the end, even if it does take maybe into the second quarter of next year. But the residents cannot afford special assessments anymore. I've taken so many phone calls, and I know other council people have also there, and it's creating an undue hardship. And I think this is a good replacement model, but I think it's important that at least we're up front with everybody and that they understand what that cost is going to be. And I think that's the only fair thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so with that, I would finish up with mine is that I think we should continue on with this, as the mayor has said also. I personally would hope that we could do it sooner than the end of the quarter next year. We would have to see how that would all work out and transpire. At this point, I think we've come this far to just table it and kind of maybe not do anything right now for whatever it would be, if it's 6 months or 12 months or whatever, that we're this close to the finish line, that I just think we should go through and get to the end and see what it is. And if we can complete it this year, fine. If it takes us through the first quarter or whatever next year, that's what it takes us, but continue on with the project. Patrick?
I just wanted to clarify something. It seemed like you two were saying two different things. One, you are anticipating that it doesn't go through. Is that like a safety, like just in case type thing?
No, I'm just basically what I'm doing is I'm doing the budget on what is the known rate today. And this is the model we have today. Obviously, this gets adopted, depending on what timeline that is, next year, if it's the first year, second quarter. And what I'm saying is that I'll budget like the special assessment revenue, look at our debt, and then if this transportation utility is approved, then we basically, what we do is we would amend the budget and adjust those figures.
And what Joe Terry had said, you had said that if it gets put off until April, that we still don't have to do special assessments for construction next year. Is that what you said, right?
No, it's consistent with what Tim said. What the Public Works Committee voted on was to forgive the special assessments that haven't gone through the final resolution process yet, if this is approved. And so at this point, it hasn't been approved yet. And if it is approved, depending on when, there's still going to be some budget implications. If we get it done by the end of this year, then we're still going to have to bond for 2022 projects because the utility won't have generated revenue yet. And then we'd be done bonding then for our routine projects by 2023. If it goes into the first quarter or the end of first quarter, we start the utility the second quarter, for example, beginning of the second quarter of 2022, then we would have to do some bonding in 2023. There probably won't be enough funds there, to perform the work on the project. So we're saying the same thing.
But the special assessments are going to be gone, is what you're saying. Like if this does move forward and go through,
Yes.
even if it is April of next year, we're still not doing special assessments.
Well, if the Common Council takes, let me back this up. If it doesn't go through, our normal process would be to work on closing out our projects over the winter. We'd go through our process to develop that assessment report. We'd have the special assessment hearing in the spring, generally in April, and a final resolution. That's the normal process. And until a utility is formally formed, that's the process by our ordinances. So we would continue to operate, like Tim would continue to operate his financial model under what is currently in place. Our engineering department and public works department would continue to operate under the current ordinances, which would mean that in April-ish, we would have an assessment hearing and issue those special assessments for the 2021 projects. What I was trying to say earlier is that if the utility is passed by then, well, the Public Works and the council have already approved no special assessments for projects that are underway that haven't had a assessment hearing. If it doesn't get approved until, say, July or August, the 2021 projects, that assessment process will be done. We're working on 2022 projects. We've done there's a preliminary resolution to inform the public that the city intends to exercise its police powers to perform or to issue special assessments. If, for example, the utility then is put in place the third quarter of 2022, well, then the engineering department would then cease to continue to work on special assessments because the utility's in place. We haven't had a hearing now, or we won't have a hearing for 2023. So that April timing, I guess what I was trying to get at is that April timing will be important for the council, that if we're really close and you're pretty sure you want this thing to be approved, someone could make a motion through Public Works to extend that or to instruct the engineering department not to present the assessment report until June. Right, then if the utility's done before then, the 2021 special assessments wouldn't go through. And again, Tim would have to adjust the budget accordingly because we would otherwise be expecting some of those revenues through special assessments.
So the initial plan was to have this done, final approval this month.
The
Common
initial plan
Council.
was to have it approved this month and have the utility implemented by January 1. That was the plan and goal that was discussed previously.
And is that still possible?
I think it's still possible, but if the desire is to if the desire is to have the final numbers for everybody before the utility is implemented, there's some things that we would be doing concurrently with waterworks and lighting. Getting accounts set up, making it, and that would happen a little bit later. So my speculation is that if we do this now, it might set off implementing the utility by as much as a quarter, as much as 3 months. It would also give staff a little breathing room. Right now, we've been kind of pressured to have everything by the end of the year. I think we could still attain that goal, but probably not, maybe, but probably not if we need to go through and have all of the exact numbers lined up before the Common Council would take action. Because then after that, we would start setting the actual accounts up through the utility. So it just breaks the work up a little bit, and some of the stuff that we would be doing concurrently, we'd have to do separately.
So if the Common Council had approved it this month, like the plan was, then foreseeably you could still have it implemented by January 1st.
Right, and we would still need this agreement with R.A. Smith. I mean, they still need to help us get this thing home. So that's kind of why it's in front of the Finance Committee, because either way, whether we want to get this implemented by January 1, if we want to know all of the specific details before the ordinance gets approved, there is more work that needs to be done to get there. And that's why this is on the meeting agenda.
Okay, so if you could just, yes or no, like, if it is approved in April, there's going to be no special assessments?
Correct, that's correct.
There's not going to be any additional special assessments?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not a big deal if it is held off until April, is what you're saying?
Right, well, before April would be best, but yes.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other, on this, in this agreement, there is no cap in it anywhere. Which employee service or services specifically are we required to complete this? On the back,
Well, it's combined, right? It's the engineer demands a little higher rate, and then if he can assign anything to some of the technical staff, he will, and that gets billed at a lower rate. What I'm proposing is that it's time and materials not to exceed $25,000. I'm confident that we can get everything done
so
for less than that, for no more than that.
is it project engineer or civil engineer, or which engineering are we looking at exactly? Because I could see, if it's a $157 job per hour, that's only 160 hours.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not a whole lot of time.
Well, the work that's been done so far has been broken up. So the project engineer has done quite a bit of the work, but whenever he's been able to assign it to somebody else, they've done that work at that lower rate. I mean, the contract that we have with them now was they set the cap because they've done this work. They knew they could get to this point. They set that cap. I think it was at 20,000, something like that. This remaining amount is just as much work as what we've done so far. I mean, finalizing this. And they're planning on using, the same staff. So some of the work's going to be done by a project manager. Some of it might be done by one of the technicians at a lower rate, similar to what they've done so far.
Okay, so we keep talking that 85% is complete. Is that correct? 85% is complete? I keep hearing 85%.
Yeah, about 85% of the parcels in the city we're confident in the number of trips and the, the property use designations for those.
So is there any way that we can see that 85% that is done?
Yeah, I don't have it now. I mean, we can. I can ask for it. We're going to need it.
Is that from R.A. Smith?
Yes.
Is
And
there-
and the reason why we don't have that is it because it's not done and it's not complete. And if we had it in our hands, it'd be public information, and we'd potentially be giving people incomplete information that sets false expectations and becomes a mess. So, that's why we don't have that right now, because it was used to create the model. If we want to bring it the rest of the way, yeah, we'll have all that information, we'll have the spreadsheets, we'll have the data.
Well, we're responsible for for our residents, for our citizens.
Yes.
So if somebody has a question, I think as much as we can be involved in the initial part, I think we should. And from what you had written here, it seems like you are working with them. So if they have a question, we don't have to involve R.A. Smith after this is done.
We should not have to, right. The part of that whole process, this last portion, is that our staff will be also learning how to do what R.A. Smith is doing now. And that's our goal, so that we wean ourselves off of their need for assistance completely. By the time we implement this thing, we're on our own.
All right.
Jake?
Just real quick, because there's been a lot of talk about special assessments, that's only going to be 1/4 of what the revenue is generated from special assessments. So for those watching, it's not all about special assessments. That's a fourth of this. There's a whole nother approximately 75% of revenue that's going to be raised from the transportation utility that has nothing to do with special assessments. And in regards to, we've been talking about this for a long time, we should just move forward with it anyway. All those conversations took place with the assumption we would have a public works director that would be there to oversee this program. So things have changed, and I do think it's appropriate to wait a little bit before we move forward on this.
One more, and then I'm going to make a motion.
As far as the Public Works Director, hopefully we'll be getting to that soon, but as it is now on the Human Resources Committee, I have not seen anything cross our desks or email. And according to municipal code, I believe the Human Resources Committee is organizational structure. So that would be the Human Resources Committee that would determine that position. So I'm kind of confused as to why we're talking that when I have not seen anything. I know that's another thing. Earlier, Tim, you had said that you're writing the budget as is the city is running today. And when I look at the budget, there's nothing in there, which I'm confused because as of the budget is today, we have a public works director. But I'll leave that for another time. But for this conversation, I don't understand why we're talking that way, because I have not seen anything official relating to that. So just my comment.
And
Thanks,
so
Tom.
I don't forget, Sherry, just as we get to item 8, to review the budget, what you just said there, if you could remind me, so I don't forget it, what you just said. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the professional services agreement with R.A. Smith on a time and materials basis, to work with city staff to refine the transportation utility model, complete the database, and work on connecting data with utility accounts, and to cap that at $25,000.
Second.
The motion and a second to approve. Committee will go around if anybody wants to say any more. Committee? Okay. Committee will vote. All in favor of the motion respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nah.
The motion carries 2-1. Thank you all for the discussion. Item number 7 is audit of the bills. And we have the bills. Not sure what the check numbers were from and to.
Yeah, it's check 9972 to 10,339.
Not seeing anything that jumps out. anybody sees anything or catches anything between now and the council, bring it forward. Otherwise, I'll move that we accept the bills.
Second.
Motion is second to accept the bills. All those in favor respond by aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Number 8 is to review the 2022 budget. Tim, I will, I guess, let you start with it here, and we'll see where we go.
All right. I handed out to all the alderpersons here today a draft of the department budget requests that the mayor had reviewed with the department heads. And, you know, obviously this is a draft as we move forward. You know, obviously any changes that are made or, you know, recalculations or whatever, you know, I usually will summarize those and keep track of those so you know what has changed from this first draft dated today. So when we get the final draft that we approve in November. Right now, I'm working on putting the budget summary together to know exactly where we're at. I have some calculations to do, but I anticipate by the end of this week I'll have that. And then hopefully at a budget meeting that we schedule next week, I'll be able to kind of present, not only to start going over through some of the budget department requests that you want to review, but also give you an overview of where the budget stands at that point in time. So I'd hope to have the budget summary done today, but things just didn't kind of transpire. We had some stuff come up, and so, but I anticipate that'll be completed by the end of this week.
When would you anticipate we could start having meetings?
I'm hoping that that's what we can do it now, or we can wait for the next agenda item, but I'd like to kind of schedule out some meetings over the next couple of weeks so that we can start going through some of the department budgets. And, you know, and historically, we've had some of those department heads kind of come in and go over those budgets with the committee. Also this year is that I did change the budget presentation from the past couple of years, just because I feel that this is a little bit easier and more informative than what the documents that we generate out of our accounting software provide. So I'm just kind of, that's what kind of set back to, was just kind of recreating this document that we used to use a number of years ago. So, but I'm hoping that, you know, this is a better document for all the persons to review.
Jake?
Being that we just received the budget, I mean, I'm fine with any quick questions. I'm just going through and making a list that I'll probably bring to a meeting next week or whenever we get to it.
Right, and absolutely. It's just aldermen start to review it, so then when we have the upcoming budget meetings, then you can have your questions.
Patrick?
I just had a quick question about Mcmillan Library. I see that they have a $2 million per year budget. They were closed for most of 2020. Have we seen a huge credit because they were closed? I mean, I know a lot of businesses that were closed that did not get any money. I'm just surprised that there's not a large credit on here from them.
Right, and the way the library board, because they have a separate library board, is that on an annual basis, the city sets their appropriation, and once that's set, that the library receives that money, and it's up to the discretion of their board how they spend that money. Now, when we met with Andy Barnett, the library director, he says that a lot of the carryover they're doing, they're reinvesting in some of the building maintenance. He referenced some projects of, like, you know, replacing some of the old windows and things like that. So, and I did express to him at that time that I thought it would be helpful that, you know, with some of those unspent funds, because the library was closed, that, you know, some communication as to how the library plans to utilize those funds would be helpful for the council.
Are you saying that the library gets $2 million a year that has no oversight at all from the common council at all?
The oversight is the budget process. And once we set that appropriation, then you have the library board that oversees those funds.
$2 million though? That's, wow. Well, police and fire, I can understand. $2 million for the library that's closed all year. I got a problem with that.
That's the process right now. Okay. Does anybody else have anything with reviewing the budget? I know Sherry, I said to remind me. I'm not sure how to take that up right now. As we go on further after tonight, maybe. Is that okay? Number 9, I guess if we can move on from 8, if that's okay with everybody, set the next meeting date. Our regular meeting would be in, not till November 2nd, I guess would be our next regular meeting.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we've usually had some of the larger departments come in. You know, usually we had like a protective, public safety, or we'd have the police and fire kind of come in and review those budgets. Obviously, Public Works is another, night because that encompasses, park and rec, street, wastewater, and the obviously the construction projects. And then usually we have a couple meetings where, depending as you review it, if, some of the smaller budgets, if, kind of at your discretion whether you want those department heads to come in, or if it's just, a question that you can email me, I can get it from the department head, or you can contact the department head themselves, or we can have them come in. Really at the discretion of the finance committee. I mean, over the years, it's, the committee has, kind of done it a couple different ways in reviewing the budget.
Oh, yeah. Sherry?
Sorry, one quick
It's okay.
question.
That's all right. That's why we're here.
Okay, so for the 2022 budget, kind of going back, Tim, how you said, as you referenced the transportation utility, that you prepared the budget as the city is functioning today. So when you're looking at, sorry, new to the budget process, so when you're meeting with the department heads, so the budget that you're putting together, you're getting these numbers from whom?
The department heads submit their budget requests.
Okay.
And then those are reviewed internally with the mayor from an executive budget standpoint. And then the mayor it can make changes as that person sees fit. And then that's what gets presented to the finance committee. And then once it goes to the finance committee, then finance committee council can make any changes that they want.
Okay. So the public works director would be the head of the public works budget? And so the street department would be the street department director head, or is that would be the public works director also? Yep. Mhm. So the public works budget for the public works director position Joe submitted was 0. That was changed.
I don't think he submitted 0, but it was changed, correct?
And that would have been by the mayor, or, okay, thank you.
Okay, Joe, and I do have something to say. I just had.
Yeah, just a real quick question, Tim. With the Public Works Director and those changes that the mayor requested, at this point, are those changes also reflected in all of the other budgets that also covers the salary of the Public Works Director?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I'm guessing we'll be moving on from as it is, as presented, but it'd be one of the,
Hey, Tom?
yes,
Tom, it's Shane.
yep. Go ahead.
Hey, I just want to add, though, there are other things in that budget that there's requests for personnel that didn't make it in the budget. There's buildings that didn't make it in the budget. So there are a number of other items that have been requested that didn't make it in the budget. Just because a department head or any department requests something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make the executive budget. Now, if the council chooses to add any of those items in there, that's up to them and that's their choice, which I respect. Thank you.
So then, Mayor, I'm just gonna, what we're given tonight is basically, I guess, your executive budget.
Not yet, because
Well,
unfortunately, we don't have
it's
the revenue
been,
side.
if it's not your executive budget, then I guess why would certain things be taken out and then it have to be looked to put back?
Because we're giving you the department budgets so you can start reviewing them, but
But
there
the-
are other things in those budgets that were asked to be included that haven't been included because it's not reasonable. Ideally, the executive budget would have the revenue side and the expense side, but we don't have all that information yet, and we want you to start being able to review it. But you guys are free to add in whatever you want. That's your choice. You guys can make motions and do whatever you want. I respect that process.
Yep.
But I'm going to present a budget, what I think is the appropriate budget, and then you guys can go from there.
Jake?
Mr. Mayor, when do you think we could get a copy of your executive budget?
Well, Tim said that he's trying to finalize that.
Right.
And then we'll sit down, because we don't know if we have an extra $1 million in the budget, and we don't know if we're $1 million short yet. That's the problem. You can't really approve items that departments request until you know how much money we're going to be short or have extra.
Tim, when do you think we could get that version of the budget?
I'm hoping by the end of this week that I'll have obviously now the bulk of the departmental budgets. Now it's just figuring out some of the revenue sides and some calculations, and I'll have that complete picture by the end of the week.
Thank you. And then in regards to the agenda item, I think if it's going to be another week to get the executive budget, if maybe we want to take up the first of a series of budget meetings 2 weeks from now, if that sounds appropriate.
2 weeks?
Yeah, so we got this budget, then we'll get the executive budget, and then start meeting with department heads, do the series of budget meetings.
Two weeks is council night.
So maybe would either next Thursday or the following Thursday work? It all would depend, I suppose, when the department heads can meet, when we can get the other budget.
Fourteenth is next Thursday.
Do you think you can get the executive budget? Okay, if we could get it by like the council meeting and then have at least a couple days to look over it, I think that'd be.
Okay. Anything else by anybody?
So what date did we end on? 14th or?
4:30?
What time? 4:30, yeah. Not real early, but we don't want to wait till 6. If we don't have to. 4:30 on the 14th. Then we'll go over it, or start going over it, and then I guess we'll make some comments that we want to make by everybody or whatever, so. If there's nothing else, this evening, I guess, unless somebody has something, we're to item number 10. I do believe, which is to adjourn. I'll second that. The motion second to adjourn. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're adjourned at 5:57, maybe it is on the clock up there or something, so. Thank you, everybody.